Hey everybody, Tim Moore from the Bulwark here. I was on with my girl Nicolle, and we were talking about two topics: Marjorie Taylor Greene on 60 Minutes and the various revelations there, as well as Sleepy Donald dozing off a little bit in meetings, Grandpa. And I just wanted to extend my remarks on both points real quick with you here. First on Marjorie Taylor Greene, discuss a lot with Nicolle the political implications of it. I thought one thing that was interesting was the media story of Donald Trump going after CBS on this in a bleat. For people that aren't kind of familiar with the backstory, obviously Donald Trump went hard at 60 Minutes, sued them, over in the stupidest lawsuit in history over the 60 Minutes edit of a Kamala Harris interview. CBS gets taken over by the Ellison family, very Trump friendly. They put Barry Weiss of the Free Press in charge of the network. Ostensibly, this was all done as part of getting approval for the merger, and they're going to make Mr. Trump happy with them. Maybe in addition to making Mr. Trump happy, part of the other goal for CBS was that they could crack that nut of, how to draw in an audience that is not politically polarized, get more Republicans back into watching the news instead of Fox News. Who knows, maybe even getting a younger audience, et cetera, et cetera. The sky was the limit for CBS. Well, in that first goal of appeasing Mr. Trump, they learned 10 years late the same thing that basically everybody else has learned, like 30 years late, really. Anybody who did business dealings with Trump in New York knew this, which is that sucking up to him, playing to his ego, only works up until the minute you don't do it anymore. And then you get nothing. Donald Trump pulls the rug out from you, under you, and you are left holding the bag. Here is his post. All caps, they are no better than the old ownership who just paid me millions of dollars for fake reporting, blah, blah, blah. The interesting thing here is that now the Ellisons are part of another merger controversy where they are interested in acquiring Warner Brothers and HBO Max. And so the fact that Trump says, all caps, they are no better than the old ownership really hinders those guys, sorry to use the pun, trump card, what they thought was their trump card in this other merger negotiation. And so we'll see. I'm sure that the Ellisons will go crawling back to Mr. Trump. Maybe they'll donate some more money to the ballroom and try to get back in his good graces. But color me tickled that Ellison and Barry have not won over the favor of Mr. Trump. And that maybe the whole, who knows, maybe this whole project of appealing to MAGA voters with real news can't work because MAGA voters don't want real news. How about that? Is that something you thought of? At the very end of the clip, you'll see Nicolle object somewhat to my assessment of Trump's schedule management. And basically, she's making the case that they're not managing his schedule if he's falling asleep. And I take that point. I guess the point I was trying to make is that you can see how they're trying to do it, and that you can see how they're messing with his schedule, trying to make it seem like he's out there all the time without tiring him too much. Obviously, that's not working that well, as evidenced by the dozing. But to me, the most interesting thing is just the trajectory and how, you're starting to see his schedule get closer and closer to what we saw from Biden, which was, early lids, end of the day, fewer public events, fewer traveling. And, we know what they all said about that. So 3 more years left for him to get older and older and tireder and drowsier and drowsier. So we'll be monitoring closely what our friends at, to wrap this all together, Fox News are saying on that. We'll see if they have any Drowsy Dawn segments. All right, everybody, stick around for me and Nicolle. Much more here on this channel. Thank you for following the Bulwark Takes, as well as my more long-form podcast over in the Bulwark podcast feed. Please subscribe to both on your audio feeds. Give us a thumbs up here on YouTube, and stick around for me and Nicolle.
The thing about Marjorie Taylor Greene in this interview wasn't all one thing. I mean, she also has absolutely zero interest in taking responsibility for all of her contributions to the toxic dialogue, saying to Leslie Stahl, well, you did it too. But on this political slice that we're starting with here, it is interesting. I mean, I'll only speak for myself. Anyone that criticized Donald Trump, who was once a Republican, has been subject to all sorts of vicious threats, including and up to by Donald Trump. And so there's something interesting when he turns the fire hose of venom on one of his own political cudgels. And she was a political cudgel. She was a weapon used against Democrats. She was a weapon out in right-wing media. She was QAnon adjacent. I don't know if she owns that or describes herself that way, but a lot of things she said synced up with them. And she is now out there telling everyone what it's like to be targeted by him. And I wonder what you make of the long-term sort of political damage that she's doing right now in the middle of this media tour.
I think potentially some of it depends on how much she keeps pushing it, right? And this is when you talk about like how big can that majority of that opposition to Trump get, what you're alluding to. Because, look, Marjorie Taylor Greene in that 60 Minutes interview said some stuff that was still pretty crazy and pretty gross, right, at times. I mean, when she was talking about the ways in which Donald Trump is in league with the establishment, you know, she was talking about how he's a vehicle for Israel, which obviously continues some of her anti-Semitic kind of undertones or overtones, David Frum might say, to some of her work in the past. You know, she talks about how Trump hasn't gone after the companies making the vaccines hard enough, right? So, at some level, it's not like Marjorie Taylor Greene flipped a switch and, you know, became a liberal. Like, she didn't. And so, and I guess from my vantage point, that is what makes this interesting and relevant and newsworthy, right? Is that if Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of woke up one morning and said, you know what, it turns out I agree with everything that Nicolle Wallace has been saying the last 10 years. Well, then, like, okay, great, welcome aboard. The water's warm. But that's not that politically interesting, right? Like, what she's saying is that she still has a lot of her right-wing, crazy MAGA views. And she's looking at Trump and saying, you're not delivering on this. She went so far in that interview as to say that I'm not really MAGA anymore. I'm just America first, because MAGA means something different. To me, that is politically interesting, because if there is some segment of the MAGA base that goes along with her, that can have their eyes opened to a reality that we've all seen, which is that Trump doesn't actually care about his base voters at all. He cares about enriching himself, and he cares about his fancy ballroom, et cetera. You know, that is how you get his, you know, political popularity, you know, down into the low 30s, into the 20s, into a place where he can't politically recover from, into a place where, you know, you have a Democratic wave next year. And so to that end, like, the question of whether Marjorie Taylor Greene represents herself or whether there's a real segment of MAGA who still have MAGA views but have been let down by Trump and are no longer going to support him, I think that's the key political question. And I think that, you know, sure, she's right on the facts of a lot of this stuff, of her critiques of Trump. And so why wouldn't there be a segment of his base that would be unhappy with him and go along with her?
This sleeping thing has kind of started to stick.
Well, for good reason. Look, our MS Now colleague, Jonathan Lemire, wrote about this for The Atlantic, about how he hasn't traveled at all this year, and he's in his bubble. At this time in 20, I guess it would have been 17, you know, he's still doing his rallies. He's traveling around the country. We haven't seen that from him. He's gone overseas a few times. And then besides that, he stays at the White House or goes to his golf clubs. And I think that it's pretty clear they're starting to manage his schedule. And part of the reason why they're having more of the cabinet meetings instead of the rallies, because you can just shuffle right on down to the cabinet meeting and people can tell you how great you are. And, you know, that's a lot more manageable for somebody that's coming up on 80 than the Trump we saw in 1.0. So I just think that this is all objective stuff that we can view with our own eyes. You know, I think that I'd said in the past, you know, I think that there were times in the first administration where there would be people who opposed Trump, you know, that were saying, oh, he's losing it, he's tired. And, you know, Trump kept a pretty vigorous schedule. And he's not coal mining or anything. He's just talking mostly and having press conferences. But he kept a pretty vigorous schedule, especially compared to President Biden, if you compare his first term to Biden's term and how often they were out there. This time it's different. And, you know, the dozing off is something that happens to everybody as they get up to their 80s. And that's what we're seeing from this president.